So, hello everyone. This is Nischit over here, and I have been a part of GeekyAnts since a year, and I primarily work on tech related to React, uh, and that's all about me. So, today in this workshop, we'll be going to cover intro to Webpack, and these are the things that we are going to cover. Uh, we'll be starting with what is Webpack, and then how Webpack works, the big four of Webpack, which is entry, output, loader, and plugins. So yeah, ever since the web development scenario started, initially it was just HTML, CSS, JavaScript. But since the ecosystem started growing, it also started becoming complex day by day. I mean, we initially had just these three, but soon we were soon various new languages were introduced, as well as various React, as well as various frameworks were also introduced as well. And with those also various tools were introduced. For example, previously we didn't have tools such as Node, NPM, Grunt, Gulp, uh, and with this complexity, also our code also become complex at the same time. So so due to such complexity issues and uh, com- various increasing code complexity as well as various tools being introduced, we were faced with various issues. So Webpack was introduced to solve one such issue, which was to avoid the complexity of code. So, for example, uh, Webpack is a Webpack is basically a module bundle, and its main purpose is to bundle JavaScript files for usage. For let's say if we have a lot of code that is being imported in JavaScript, then Webpack helps us to bundle all these things and present to the browser in a better way. And the main thing about Webpack is that it's not just a module bundle. So it also acts as a task runner, which is that it can transform, bundle, and package any other resource or asset using plugins and loaders. And the main thing about Webpack is that it also has a lot of wiki downloads on NPM. So it is across 24 million weekly downloads. And it is also said that it's the most popular JavaScript bundler that's available. So what is a module bundler basically? So most programming languages that we have, let's say C, C++, they have a way to import code from one file to another. But JavaScript wasn't originally designed with this feature. So initially, what used to happen is that we had a very big file for whatever code that we used to write in JavaScript. Or as soon as the import was even introduced, we had a lot of include statements in the HTML file itself. So these issues came up, and that necessity gave the necessity for something called bundler. So what does module bundler basically do? So, for example, as we can see in this image right over here, we have multiple import statements, and we have also imported modules over here. So, Webpack basically does is that combines all this JavaScript code into a single, and it as in the second image we can see that it has been bundled into something called bundle.js. So that is what Webpack do. So it bundles all the source file dependencies and third file dependencies into a single file. So yeah, how does it do? I mean, it has bundled all these things, but there needs to be a certain way it does, right? So if you can see in the image that is given over here, we have various file dependencies that are there. For example, if we take the JS, then it is dependent on the HBS file. Then it also has import statements from CSS and so on. So to solve this issue, it works in a way which is called dependency graph. So it creates a dependency graph as soon as it encounters a first file. So we give in the configuration, we provide the entry point, which is where Webpack starts the processing. So let's say, for example, if we have given the entry file or the entry point as bootstrap.main.ts, then it checks, okay, app.component.js has been imported in our bootstrap file. So it creates a dependency graph based on. Then similarly, it creates a dependency graph on the file, on the imports that have been made in app.component.js, and so on. So it helps us in a way to avoid the multiple import statements that we do, as well as it manages so that any occurrences that are done wrongly can be corrected as well. So, for example, if we have imported a.js in b.js, and b.js is then imported inside c.js. So these kind of in, nested imports, they cause certain issues if they are not imported properly. So if I directly import c.js in the very first line, then it might cause issues in our file. So what it does is that it creates a dependency graph, and then it processes the code and then packages it, and then provides us as static files in the form of JS, CSS, JPG, and PNG file. And that is not all Webpack does. So it also does various other things, as I mentioned. So, for example, it also watches for changes in a code and reruns the task, as well as it also does Babel translation. Other than that, it also does TypeScript and TypeScript conversion to JS, SES conversion to CSS, and it can also convert inline images to data URLs. So this helps us the images to load faster on our web pages. It can also perform something called tree shaking. So tree shaking is basically removal of all the dead code from our from the code that we have, and it can also uglify and minify your code. Now, uglify basically means turning your code into unreadable format. So it changes the variable name and class names to unreadable format, so that anyone who is directly looking into the code doesn't figure out, okay, what is the logic behind it. It can also minify your code, so that minify basically means removing white spaces and similar things. It can also handle something called hot module replacement. So hot module replacement is something like a library load, but it only replaces the module instead of refreshing the whole page. And this helps us in development. So these all things are done thanks to the plugin functionality, as well as loaders that are available for Webpack. So we have four main concepts to get started with Webpack. So let's say, for example, uh, we have entry, output, loaders, and plugins. So these four concepts are form the basis of Webpack. So in entry, uh, what we have. So let's say if we go into the webpack.config.js, we uh, we have something called entry over there. So entry basically means the point that we are providing to Webpack, that okay, this is the initial file or the entry to my app. Uh, in suppose in frameworks, in libraries like React, we have uh, we have app.js that we give usually, that okay, this is a page, this is a file that is an entry point to my application code. So it is also called as contextual root of your application. So that is provided in the entry. The output is where basically what happened, what is a file that comes out after all the processing that has been done. So in the output configuration, what we basically say to Webpack, okay, this is the path that you have to output the file to. As you can see, we have added path.resolve directory name test. So this is a folder that Webpack is going to output my file into. I can also form specify the format that, okay, which format do I want the file in as well. So yeah, it basically tells Webpack where and how to distribute the bundles that I've received. After that, we have something called loader over here. So loader basically it tells a Webpack how to load the files in a content. So over here, if you can see, there are in a module configuration that we have over here, we have specified rules, loaders, and other things. So in a detailed way, test basically means okay, these are the type of files that you need to look for. Okay, and after that, we also specify that okay, if you encounter any folder named node underscore modules, then please exclude doing while processing. And in use, we specify what type of loader we are using. So over here, we have specified a loader called Babel loader. So what it basically does is that it helps us to convert our ES 2015 file to be backwards compatible so that it can be used by every browser without any issues. After that comes in the plugins. So plugins basically apply functionality at the compilation level. So let's say loader has processed a file and me uh, given me a file output, then plugin starts acting upon it. So for example, if we have used Uglify.js plugin over here, then it will change uh, the code or the variables into unreadable format by using plugins. So we have also called something called hot module replacement, as I mentioned. So hot module replacement is a much better version of live reload. So in live reload, what basically happens is that let's say if I'm using HTML, CSS, JavaScript code, okay, and I have made certain changes in my code, the live reload functionality automatically uh, reloads as soon as it encounters a change, and it reloads basically the whole file. So it takes time. But in hot module replacement, what we have is that only the module that has been changed will be replaced. So this helps us a lot while developing things. So let's have a short coding demo on how Webpack works. So if you look over here, this is a file that I have already created as a project. So let's say we have something of a basic file, basic web app that we have. Over here, I have a package.json that I have created using npm init, and I have also added Webpack and other tools necessary for me to run. And this here is a heart of Webpack, which is a webpack.config.js file. So as I mentioned, the very first thing that we encounter over here is where path requires path. So this is required for Webpack to understand, okay, what path are we using? So, and Telsor plugin is one of the plugins that we use to minify our code. So the very first thing that we notice over here is the entry file. And in the entry file, I have specified that, okay, this is the path or the file of the entry file, which is an entry point to my application. And if I come over here, I have this file which I created for index.js. Okay, and after that, we encounter an optimization or the plugin. We have used it as a plugin for minimizing whatever code that we have. Uh, After that, we have output. So output basically does is that once the process has been done by Webpack, it will create a dist folder and if not present, it will create a disk folder, and then it will output in the format of bundle.js. So once that has been done, we get it in our in our workspace itself. After that, we have something called loaders. So loaders basically, yeah. So as we can see, what we have given over here in the module is the initial test that okay, we'll be looking only for JS files, and we'll be looking only for JS files. And as soon as we encounter a JS file, we'll be processing it. But it will also exclude any node underscore model folders that we have. After that, we can specify the loader that we want to use. So loader basically helps us to transform the code, and we can specify presets as well. So this preset helps us to convert our smart code into like smartly uh, into code that is before that is compatible with all browsers. So Babel preset is which we are using. So this is how our code is transformed into backward compatibility as well. And we have also added a mode, like we have also mode over here in development. So Webpack has a default configuration of production. So whenever it is done, it minifies the JavaScript code according to it, and then output whatever it is. So, but since we are using it in development right now, we'll put the mode as development. And yeah, that's it. After that, we'll be adding a script over here so that we get a build after the Webpack processes the code itself. So I'll be doing a short build over here. So if I add yarn build over here, I have already specified in the build itself Webpack, and the config is given in this format. So Webpack has processed the code and it has output the final bundle file. So if you see over here, we have a bundle.js file, which is now minified, which is now like bundled and put together in a single. Over here, we just had a single file uh, over here in this format, but now it has bundled all the code and output given us output in this format. So one more thing that we can notice over here is that it has converted the ES6, the arrow format, into browser compatible, which is it is also polyfilled the code itself over here in this format. So that is what basically Webpack does. And yeah, that is the coding demo. So yeah, Webpack also has certain limitations of it. So it is too complex. Like it's a bit complex to understand, so it's not very easy to use, and it has a steep learning curve. So, for example, we have to understand plugins, the loaders, and the various things that we have to use. So, it is terribly complex. Also, it is better to use in much complex projects rather than building small apps. So, for example, if you are doing the app that is very short base and it doesn't have much lines of code, so it's better to go with the normal CRA in case of React, or the very basic pack, other than using Webpack directly. And it is also slow. So it relies a lot upon plugins to do very simple functions. So if I want to add something called live reload, I have to add a plugin over here. If I want to change something, then there's a plugin for that as well. So it is too much relied on plugins. So these are the shortcomings of Webpack. And we have alternatives for Webpack as well. Grunt and Gulp are basically task runners, which can act as an alternative for Webpack. Browserify is similar to Webpack, but it's a bit slower than Webpack, and it doesn't support as much as plugins as Webpack does. Brunch and Parcel are similar alternatives as well. And thank you, everyone.